CMLL, one of the most amazing streaks in wrestling, is about to come to an end. Felino has wrestled at least one match in every month since April 1991, or almost 29 years without a serious enough injury to put him out of action. And he hardly wrestled in no-risk style. Unless he does a match in the next 2 weeks, which is unlikely, the streak will end. Roberto Figueroa said Dr. Wagner Jr. is in talks to return here. He hasn't been around since 2015 and for the most part since 2008. AAA, the company, has announced it will start running empty arena shows starting April 25th, and running the next 4 Saturday nights at 8 p.m. local time, 9 p.m. Eastern, that will air on YouTube and Facebook, but surprisingly not on Twitch, which is their paying subscriber channel. They will be doing a lucha fighter tournament with 16 men, 8 women and 4 minis. No names were announced, nor a format, nor a location for taping. All Japan, with Wrestle One folding, Shotaro Ashino, one of its top stars, is headed here. Pro Wrestling Noah, the global tag team tournament, has come down to El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. and Rene Dupree as the surprise A block winners against B block winners Go Shiozaki and Katsuhiko Nakajima on an April 18th show that will air from their TV studio on the DDT streaming service. The final standings were: A block 1. Wagner and Dupree 2-1 advanced to finals by winning head-to-head match over Kainu and Masa Kitamiya, 2. Kainu and Kitamiya 2-1, 3. Namichi Marufuji and Masaaki Mochizuki and Kaito Kiyomiya and Shuhei Taniguchi 1-2. B block 1. Shiozaki and Nakajima 2-1, advanced to finals based on beating Takashi Sugiura and Hideki Sekine, 2. Sugiura and Sekine 2-1, 3. Daisuke Sekimoto and Yoshiki Inamura and Akatoshi Saito and Masao Inoue 1-3. This was crazy parody booking in the sense that going into the final show on April 14th, all 8 teams were 1-1. They are doing a full 7-match show on April 18th, as opposed to the tournament where they just did 2 tournament matches and nothing else, and the last 4 tournament matches were on April 14th. On that show, Sugiura and Sekine went into first place, beating Saito and Inoue in 8:27 when Sekine pinned Inoue with a German suplex. Kainu and Kitamiya beat Kiyomiya and Taniguchi in 14:58 to go into A block first place when Kitamiya pinned Taniguchi with a spear in 14:58. Shiozaki and Nakajima then won the B block over Sekimoto and Inamura in 24 minutes when Shiozaki pinned Inamura with a lariat. Wagner and Dupree won the A block, beating Marufuji and Mochizuki in 17:17 when Wagner pinned Marufuji with a moonsault. On April 10th, Sekimoto and Inamura beat Saito and Inoue in 3:19 when Sekimoto pinned Inoue with a German suplex. Kitamiya and Kainu beat tag champs Marufuji and Mochizuki in 16:21 when Kainu pinned Mochizuki with a high kick. On April 13th, Kiyomiya and Taniguchi beat Wagner and Dupree when Taniguchi pinned Wagner in 12:01 with a diving body press, while Shiozaki and Nakajima beat Sugiura and Sekine in 20:56 when Nakajima pinned Sekine with a brainbuster. New Japan, Harold May sent out a letter to fans. While not in the letter, even though NJPW is taking in virtually no revenue, up to this point in time, all staff members and those under contract are receiving their full salary and benefits. New Japan has been unable to fill its television time slots around the world with new content, but unlike UFC, AEW, Bellator, which is also feeling it because DAZN probably isn't paying, but they don't have as many people under guaranteed deals, and WWE, where the bulk of the money is made from television, more than half of New Japan's revenue comes from the presentation of live events, both ticket prices and merchandise. By not running shows, they are feeling this far more than those companies. In the long run, they are going to feel the pinch much quicker than either UFC, WWE or AEW, or for that matter Impact, whose budget probably includes little when it comes to live events. Ring of Honor is a question because it's part of Sinclair, but hardly a major part or something so high priority if finances tighten that it wouldn't be untouchable. One person we know who does business with them noted how they have made it clear in current talks that their priority is health even when talking business on an inside level and not making statements to the public, and he noted this is very different from most sports companies right now. May wrote this letter. As I'm sure you're aware, last week we announced the cancellation of the remainder of the events on the Road to Dontaku Tour. Our latest 12 cancellations from April 19th in Karakoram to May 4th in Fukuoka join other events already cancelled from March 1st onward. I know how much of a disappointment this is to fans who were looking forward to attending these events. Ticket holders are all being refunded, however, and as we closely monitor the situation with regards to events after May 4th, ticket sales have been suspended or delayed accordingly to make the process as easy as possible for fans. NJPW have been taking the ongoing global situation very seriously from an early stage. Currently over 90% of our employees are working from home as we continue to do our civic duty as a company to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We, like you, are disappointed and frustrated at not being able to present the best professional wrestling on the planet on a live basis at the current moment in time. As a result, we want you to join us in preventing the spread of this disease. Please wash your hands and gargle regularly. If you are in essential work, we sincerely appreciate you and ask that you take precautions to stay safe and healthy. Otherwise, please stay home and watch the wealth of content available as part of the NJPW World Together project. From archived matches with English commentary for the first time to the fantastic My Dad is a Heel Wrestler movie. Together we can make a powerful tag team that can kick out of this, or any other crisis. We are always proud of the greatest fan base in the world. Particularly in this uncertain environment, we are especially grateful to fans that have shown their support for New Japan Pro Wrestling even without being able to see live events. Every Tokon Shop customer and NJPW World subscriber has our deepest gratitude, and the appreciation of every single NJPW staff member and wrestler. Make no mistake, we will get through this together. I firmly believe that the fighting spirit of New Japan Pro Wrestling is one that can overcome any opposition. I look forward to the day the greatest wrestlers in the world can show that spirit in the ring once more. Will Ospreay, who has been concentrating on heavy lifting, has been posting photos of his new physique. Ospreay has gone from about 202 to 220 pounds since wrestling ended. Here and there, yet another company having problems right now is Ticketmaster, as well as StubHub, regarding refunds for tickets purchase. Ticketmaster has changed its policy from customers being able to get refunds if an event is postponed, rescheduled or cancelled. Now it only lists cancelled, although it is more following the policy of the promoter. If WWE or AEW agrees to refund, Ticketmaster will do so, but you will likely lose the service charge. But it will not do so if the promoter of an event reschedules and doesn't offer refunds. People have noted to us that most of the smaller promotions, including WrestleCon, which took a huge financial hit, have refunded money for Wrestlemania weekend. Evolve hadn't fully done so as of last word, but they also told customers of that issue, and promised to do so. Many had complained Wrestlemania tickets themselves haven't been refunded yet, while every other promotion but Evolve had done so, but they were starting to be refunded on April 14th. StubHub said that due to the large number of cancelled events, that handling all the refunds at this point it isn't yet manageable. More than 20,000 live entertainment events have been cancelled. The NWA announced that on April 19th, the date planned for their Crockett Cup pay-per-view, they will instead put up free on YouTube and their Facebook page the 2019 Crockett Cup pay-per-view, which was headlined by Nick Aldis vs. Marty Scurll. Jeff Bowden posted an update on his current battle with cancer. I have now been readmitted to the hospital to begin round 2 of my chemo treatments. Appetite still sucks and I'm down over 50 pounds since this all began. The hair loss thing is real as my goatee has begun to fall out. Kim, his wife, said she's never seen me without a mustache in the over 20 years we've been together, but I think that's about to change. Good news is that the doctors are very happy with my blood work and there is hope at this stage, preliminary, that I might be done after 3 stages instead of 6. Keep those thoughts and prayers coming. Just so you know, I may not respond to your comments individually, but I do see them. And they each mean a lot. Hijo del Santo, in an interview with Record, talked about wanting his son to play El Nieto del Santo, the grandson of Santo, in the movies as opposed to the pro wrestling ring. He never said his son wouldn't wrestle, but his son came in, got a lot of pub, and then stopped wrestling, so it certainly seems like he didn't like it. The Tracy Smothers GoFundMe for cancer treatment put together by Chris Spradlin, Cassius Ono, has raised $12,562 at press time. A number of Observer readers besides those listed last week have added to the list, including former promoter Norm Connors. Mick Foley and David Arquette have roles in a movie, 12-Hour Shift, which had a trailer come out this past week. The movie was set to premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival before it was cancelled. It's a horror comedy about a group of nurses who steal internal organs and sell them on the black market. Arquette is the producer and one of the stars, and Foley's name is listed with Chloe Farnworth, Kit Williamson, Tara Perry and Nikia Gambi-Turner as the other stars. A correction from last week. It appears that Dan O'Mahony was actually the 3rd youngest world champion in history, not the 2nd youngest. Joe Stecker was 22 years and 3 months old when he defeated Charlie Cutler in Omaha on July 5, 1915, to be recognized as world champion after the retirement of Frank Gotch. Luthez was the only champion recognized widely at the age of 21 for his first short run. O'Mahony was 22 years and nearly 10 months old when he won his title from Jim Londos on June 27, 1935, in Boston. In listing the wrestlers with statues displayed publicly, we inadvertently left out Frank Gotch, who has a big statue in Humboldt, Iowa, his hometown, at Bicknell Park. Kerry Morton, 19, the son of Ricky Morton, is getting into pro wrestling. He was an actor in local musical theaters but also won the Tennessee State High School Championship at 138 pounds and trained under his father, Tom Pritchard, Robert Gibson, Chase Owens, who was also a state champion high school wrestler, and Bobby Eaton. He was ready to put himself on the map when independent wrestling got shut down. He said he's also trying to learn to be a producer in wrestling. A small arena in Puebla, Mexico, Jim Guerrero de Cruz, had announced an empty arena show for April 12. They set up for donations and were streaming it live on Facebook. After the opening match, they were cleaning the ring for a second match when local government officials recognized the building and came and shut the show down. Others in Mexico have taken the tact of taping empty arena matches in secret locations, airing them later and asking for donations, and since the entire show was taped, that avoids the possibility of being shut down. Europe, Al Marshall, an independent star in the late 60s and early 70s, passed away on April 16. Marshall was born in Leeds, England, and was an amateur wrestler trained by Jack Taylor in that sport. He was later trained for pro wrestling by George de Relwiscow. He was signed by Joint Promotions in 1978, but an industrial accident at his regular job ended his in-ring career in 1980, just as he was starting to get some steam nationally. He was a familiar face for the next few decades around the UK. Seen and regularly attended reunions. Ring of Honor. Besides the contracted talent, Ring of Honor has been paying non-contracted talent, whether it be wrestlers booked on a per-show basis, ring crew, cameramen, referees, etc. that were originally booked for the shows cancelled thus far and through May what they would have been paid had those shows taken place. Impact, they taped a group of shows this week, ending on April 10. The planned Rebellion pay-per-view is off and instead they taped some of the Rebellion matches, using the Rebellion name, which will air on the April 21st and April 28th TV shows. Rebellion was originally set for April 19 in New York. They'll probably start pushing the new card because Tessa Blanchard, the company's top star, was not at the taping and I don't know who did and didn't come or were able, particularly since the tag champs are Ethan Page and Josh Alexander, both from Canada, and the company didn't book anyone from Canada to the tapings because they weren't allowed in the country. Michael Elgin is Canadian but lives in the St. Louis area so he wouldn't have had an issue. The matches that were announced were Blanchard defending against Elgin and Eddie Edwards in a three-way, Ace Austin vs. Willie Mack for the X title, Jordan Grace vs. Taya Valkyrie, who is also from California, for the Knockouts title, Sami Callihan vs. Ken Shamrock and Kiera Hogan vs. Kylie Ray. Blanchard not coming was her own choice, unlike with AEW where the California crew was told not to come. Callihan had also noted in social media posts that he would not do any pro wrestling matches until the crisis was under control. But he evidently changed his mind because his match with Shamrock is still on the schedule. Grace vs. Valkyrie wasn't listed in the advertising we saw. In fact, only the X title is listed as being defended. The April 21st show is listed as Shamrock vs. Callihan, Austin vs. Mack, Hogan vs. Ray and Rhino and Tommy Dreamer vs. Jake and David Christ. April 23rd is listed as Chris Bay vs. Suicide, TJ Perkins, vs. Trey Miguel vs. Rohit Raju. They filmed 12 weeks worth of television in 3 days, which sounds amazing. It starts on April 21st and covers them through mid-July. It's tough because that means no Blanchard and no world champion or tag team champions until mid-July. Mike Jackson, the famed Georgia Championship Wrestling enhancement guy from the 70s and 80s, appeared on the April 14th television show losing to Johnny Swinger. The story was that Swinger was going to face a young buck named M. Jackson, and kept talking like nobody believed he could pull that off. He cut his promo about the Young Bucks, but then the screen read Mike Jackson. This was taped in Atlanta, where he was a regular on TV, best known for being the small guy who made the then Green Road Warriors look both gigantic and impressive in 1983 when they were breaking in. But that was so long ago it's doubtful many in the crowd would have known. Jackson, who started wrestling in 1974, is really thin, which goes with being a 70-year-old who is in great shape because at that age you're not going to have any size with significant usage of chemicals. But he was in great shape for his age, looking like one of those old guys who is a training machine. He worked several minutes and never got tired, nor did he ever stop. People on the internet were calling it a match of the year, which was beyond preposterous. But Jackson looked as good as any 70-year-old I've seen in the ring. Once the people saw him do some athletic things, of course they got behind him. He did the Undertaker rope walk around most of the ring, got up and down great, did a tope. Really, he was amazing for his age before Swinger pinned him using the ropes. I believe it was his first time on national television since 1991. AEW, Jim Ross noted that the other grandfather of two of his grandchildren just passed away on April 12 due to the coronavirus. Given Ross' age and past health issues, I can't see him traveling to a show at this time. I do believe they'll try and get him to do things such as the voiceovers he did for the Jon Moxley vs. Jake Hager match and other features to keep his voice on television and social media. SoCal Uncensored, the website, not the tag team, which took its name from Steve Bryant's website, noted that while these bouts won't take place, they had a date in Los Angeles for Dynamite on May 20th as well as a June 10th date in Ontario, California. Jon Moxley on Wrestling Observer Radio said about WWE versus AEW: when fans go to a WWE show, they want everything to be good, but the second they feel like they're getting screwed with, they'll turn on the whole show. And you get things like the wave and the CM Punk chants and stuff like that. We don't have any of that because our fans know we're not going to screw them over. Part of going to a WWE show is you want a middle finger, Vince. You have to give them what they want. WWE just kind of had the mentality of, we know better than them, we'll give them this guy. All you have to do is give them the guy they want. It's not a true meritocracy in WWE, but fortunately we're not going to make those same mistakes in AEW. If something's not working or sucks, we're going to know, and we're going to be like, this doesn't work and it sucks. We're not going to be like, no, trust me, it rules. Ultimately, the fans can trust us to always deliver in the long term. In the TNT title tournament, the April 22nd show will have the last two first-round matches: Sabian vs. Dustin Rhodes, winner facing Lance Archer, and Sammy Guevara vs. Darby Allin, winner facing Cody. The semifinals, which I'm told were great matches, air on April 29th. That gives them several weeks to build the May 23rd pay-per-view title final. Also on April 22nd is Orange Cassidy's TV debut against Janeane Havoc, as well as Brody Lee and Kenny Omega matches. I do know people who believe they will pop a big quarter for Cassidy's debut, and we will see. Cassidy is one of the top merch sellers in the company, and merch selling and ratings draws are two different things, but this will be a test. They are building to episode 200 of BTE. This week was a multi-part episode 199. This was comedy week for the promotion since they aren't working for more than a month. Cody produced a Road to, which was a mock board meeting via Zoom with Cody, Tony Schiavone, Butcher, Blade, and Bunny, QT Marshall, Britt Baker, Joey Janela, all on the screen like celebrities on Hollywood squares. The idea was during the time down to come up with ideas to get people over. It was all of them coming up with some of the worst ideas possible and Cody pretending to write them down, while not writing any of them down. BTE was based on building and doing matches from the BTE compound on the tennis courts in a city that they called Parts Unknown, which is clearly in Rancho Cucamonga, since the show ended with the Young Bucks in the ring play wrestling with Matt and Nick's kids. Matt Hardy opened the first show with the rules of a squash match. Among them is a 3-minute time limit, that the jobbers are only allowed one offensive move or one double team move per match. The jobbers are not allowed to have a better body or a better 10 than the stars. And the stars have to win with a move made famous by either the Road Warriors, the Steiner brothers, or the APA. Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian came out to Somebody Going Bomb 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 to the theme of Iron Man, which was the Road Warriors music. Daniels and Kazarian then rushed Simon Lotto and Stephen Andrews like the opening of a 1983 Georgia Championship Wrestling Road Warriors squash, and ended up beating them with the Doomsday Device. They noted the ring on the tennis courts was the old PWG ring, and the Young Bucks noted that they had some of the greatest matches of their career in the ring and brought the kids in the ring to do pro wrestling in there with them. Luchasaurus was still looking for his tail. He went to a park which was shut down. He called Tommy Dreamer, who was mad at him because once he got on AEW TV his rate went up 14 times, and Luchasaurus said that Marco's toys are expensive. He called Jungle Boy, who somehow picked up sticks while near a creek and somehow that was his phone. He called Joey Ryan as well. Kenny Omega talked about how he lifts heavy after every match and that's why his muscles are so full, and also because he drinks a ton of caffeine. He went to bench press and had 65 pounds on the bar, which is ridiculously light, did some reps and pretended he reached failure and couldn't get the bar off his chest. Who showed up to pull the bar off him but his hated enemy Colt Cabana, and they did the Scooby-Doo chase scene again. Peter Avalon and Brandon Cutler were arguing over who lost their tag match last week. The joke is they both did, as it was a double pin finish. Somehow this led to Scorpio Sky facing Avalon and Cutler in a 3-way, and Sky won by pinning both at the same time, so both remain winless. This match was good. They continued to do matches with the least amount of people as anyone, as you only have the wrestlers, the referee, and one cameraman, Nick Jackson or Brandon Cutler, as the hard cam is far away. Excalibur does voiceovers later as opposed to calling Liv, and Justin Roberts does the ring entrances in post-production. Excalibur said that it was another Super No Vacancy crowd, which is a spoof on Japanese newspapers, as that's the term they use for a sellout crowd. The show ended up with Nick wanting a dream match that would take place next week. The tease was it was Nick wanting to wrestle Matt. The second show was an Under the Limit Battle Royal, which was a rumble match where jobbers only count as one person. Kazarian and Sky asked each other their numbers. Kazarian said, "I drew one of the worst number." Sky said, "I too drew a bad number and I'll see you out there." Then Daniels asked what numbers they had drawn. Private Party was in the backyard doing a fight scene with double team moves on a guy. Somewhere in there they put masks on and did double team pro wrestling moves and kung fu movie spots in a backyard with no ring. A guy in a panda suit showed up and they blew him off, but the panda, also wearing a mask, came out of the sky to take them out. Baker, who did all of her promos this week with tissue in her nose from it getting busted 2 weeks ago, was on Zoom with her best friend Shabani and called the psychic guy they use with jokes about how Tony has insurance, and the psychic said he knows Tony has WCW money. The psychic and Baker, in reading Tony's mind, said he hates coming out to Junior's Boomer Sooner song, and Baker said that yes, he hates Jim Ross. The psychic and Baker also said that Tony still has hate from Mick Foley for ruining his championship win. Baker said Foley despises Tony. The psychic also said Tony has a cavity, and Baker said how she's been telling him this but he never listens. Tony hung up on them. Tony then got a phone call from Starbucks congratulating him on his promotion to head barista in one of their Atlanta locations. Luchasaurus was talking to his mother, who was a stuffed dinosaur, telling him to find his tail, and going crazy. But it was all a dream. In his dream, Taya Valkyrie used a knife to cut off his tail. They did more Omega Cabana comedy. Then they did a total spoof of a Royal Rumble where the winner gets to pick his main event match at BTE 200, including references to there being no sign to point to guys doing pins and submissions because they don't understand the rules. Kazarian and Scorpio were 1-2 as teased, and Daniels was 3 and acted like they should all work together, but Kazarian and Scorpio dumped him immediately. When Lotto and Andrews came in, Excalibur said there's not a chance in the world either of these guys will main event BTE 200, but we can all suspend disbelief. Avalon was eliminated by jumping over the top after a low blow. Cutler, who was the cameraman, jumped in, but Matt clotheslined him over the top in 1 second and he went back to filming. At no point did they have more than 5 people in the ring, plus a ref outside the ring and 1 cameraman. Scorpio was eliminated and started shooting hoops on the basketball court. Nick came in last and after a few spots went to the basketball hoop, blocked Scorpio's shot, started dribbling all around him and super kicked him. Nick went to the tennis court, whipped Avalon into the tennis net, and when he came off, super kicked him. They pretended Kazarian got eliminated off camera, and when Nick got in the ring he clotheslined Lotto and Andrews over the top, leaving only he and Matt as the last 2. But Kazarian came from under the ring. They threw him out, but he landed on 1 foot on the tennis court and started hopping until Nick did the running kick on the apron, knocking Kazarian down and out. Nick and Matt did a non-serious series of spots until Nick gave Matt a German suplex on the apron and Matt fell to the floor, so Nick won. So Nick got to name his match, which is an Anywhere Goes, I guess Falls Count Anywhere, no DQ match against Matt, which will be released on April 20th. It will be the first time the two brothers have wrestled each other in a singles match since 2011 matches in TNA when they were Max and Jeremy Buck. Notes from the April 15th show. This was a show where you could tell, based on the intros of matches at the start of the show and for next week being done in post, that it was stuff put together from different times. Britt Baker seemed fine, so it would appear her match was taped before the Sheeta match last week where she broke her nose, but I don't know that as a fact. Hager vs. Moxley was taped back at the last set of Jacksonville tapings since Moxley wasn't brought to these tapings. Kip Sabian vs. Chuck Taylor was taped on a different day and put on this show, which made sense to show Sabian with a win prior to his tournament match next week. I thought the first hour was entertaining, and Moxley vs. Hager was like the Johnny Gargano vs. Tommaso Ciampa match last week on NXT, in that it was very good but too long, although this was a lot shorter than that one. They worked the match without calling hardly anything, just by feel and reaction. Tony Khan made the call not to cut anything because he felt the match was like art and didn't want to mess with the art. The beginning of shoot style, they may not have tried with a crowd, but I thought was good, and the end was very good. Moxley compared doing almost everything on the fly with little planned out to be similar to his match with Minoru Suzuki earlier this year. Jake Roberts opened the show with another Lance Archer promo. Tremendous again. Roberts is really coming into his own as far as using his strength of delivery to make Archer seem like a larger-than-life star. There was a Brady Bunch spoof by Jericho as the Bubbly Bunch with the old Brady Bunch open photos deal, but using the Inner Circle and 2 of Jericho's dogs. Colt Cabana did a promo and noted that while Archer became a star in Japan, he's been a star in Japan for 15 years, has been a star in China, Australia, India and Europe, and has beaten huge guys before. Archer pinned Cabana in 11:21 to advance to the semis. It was good. Cabana did a double splash spot and Jericho references Super Porky. Jericho was hilarious at times during the commentary. Archer won clean with blackout, looked strong, but gave Cabana enough to not eat him up. Britt Baker, in a dentist office, started a series called Rules of a Role Model. Rule number 1 is always fight fair. She said that her grit, passion and dedication makes her the face of the women's division. They did a series of vignettes from wrestling and MMA people on Moxley versus Hager. The MMA people all picked Hager and the wrestling people went for Moxley. Among the people appearing for segments were Ariel Helvani, Taz, Ron Funches, Bellator announcer Mike Goldberg, putting in some of his trademark MMA phrases in talking about the match, John McCarthy, Dan Soder, Ortiz and Santana and Josh Thompson among others. Baker beat Cassandra Golden in 1:11. Baker confronted Shida after the match. They also pointed out new signee Anna Jay at ringside. Baker got the pin after a kick to the back of the head. They did a bubbly bunch vignette with the different inner circle characters at their homes. Guevara was mad at Matt Hardy for calling him a fake Latino who didn't know Spanish, and Guevara would punch the bag and go uno, dos. Hager talked about punishing Omega and he had 2 kids, and told them to put their hands over their ears when he said shit. Jericho spoofed an Ozzy Osbourne skit and missed when he poured orange juice, getting much of it on the counter. Jericho then called his assistant all frantic because he was out of toilet paper. Guevara beat Shug D, or Sugar Dunkerton in 5:58. Jericho called D Pineapple Pete. Guevara had D on his shoulders and did 3 full squats with him and then used a Samoan drop and followed by a GTS for the pin. Guevara then said he was giving a spoiler for next week, that Sammy beats the shit out of Darby Allin. He attacked Shug after the match and gave him curb stomps until Allin made the save. Sabian pinned Chuck Taylor in 10:24. Penelope Ford kept interfering. An improvement is that here, when she did, it was always with ref Aubrey Edwards distracted so they protected the ref. Jericho made a joke about how Tony Schiavone has been calling wrestling for 65 years. Ford took off her jacket and then Orange Cassidy took off his jacket. Edwards was distracted by Jimmy Havoc, who gave Cassidy a DDT to set up their match next week. Ford gave Taylor a Frankensteiner off the top and Sabian cradled him for the pin. Sabian and Ford made out after the match. Shawn Spears beat Jude Law with a running C4 in 2:19. Main event saw Moxley beating Hager to keep the title in 30:46. It was all technical wrestling early. Moxley used a figure 4 around a barricade in the seats at Daly's place. They never identified it as Daly's place but it was obvious. They traded hard knees and this was very hard hitting. They worked their ass off at a hard pace but there are just realities of empty area wrestling and attention spans. Moxley used a double arm DDT for a near fall. Hager used a chair to the gut, a chair to the ankle and the ankle lock. Moxley refused to quit and Hager said he would break his ankle. Moxley flipped Hager out of the ring. Moxley tried a guillotine but Hager powered out. The brawling at the end was really good. Moxley used the paradigm shift on the chair to get the pin. UFC Khabib Nurmagomedov said that he wants to fight Tony Ferguson in September. His window to fight him sooner is closed because he celebrates Ramadan. But Ferguson now would have to beat Justin Gaethje to get the shot. Anthony Kazi, a New York Post photographer who passed away due to the coronavirus on April 12, was honored in a graphic sent out by the company. Kazi was known to a number of people in the company since he was at all the shows in the city since they started running regularly there. He was also very popular in the New York sports world. Kazi was 48, and it was noted to us that he was a strong guy. It was known he was fighting for his life but the perception that the virus won't kill people who are under 50 and in good health made people not expect this as the end result and it left a lot of people stunned. Whereas the Post wrote a story about him talking about him having young children, which was all he wanted to talk about and his main goal was to be a good father for them. Bellator, while the pandemic of course has hurt Bellator given they aren't running shows, but the double whammy is all the issues with DAZN, and DAZN was the difference between Bellator running at a profit and a loss. This is a huge story to follow regarding if DAZN survives, and also if it does, whether they renew after the 3 years are up in 2021. Viacom bought Bellator and made it the focal point of Spike, now Paramount, because of Kevin Kay being the guy who first greenlit MMA for television. Kay is no longer with the station, and Dave Schwartz, one of the top guys with the station who then moved to Bellator, is no longer with Bellator. Other MMA top-ranked boxing is looking at running either the UFC Apex Arena or the WWE Performance Center for empty arena shows going forward to fulfill its own ESPN commitments. By the way, 13 days before they said this and Bob Arum talked about opening up when Florida said it was okay, Arum said about Dana White, He ought to be ashamed of himself. What's going on in this country and the world with this virus? The last thing we need is for an event to take place with no spectators just to get the event to take place. But the truth is Dana White is somebody with flawed intelligence. One's plans for empty arena shows on April 17th and April 24th in Singapore were cancelled after Singapore tightened up restrictions to fight the coronavirus. It's not clear whether their May 29th show in Manila in the Philippines will go on as a scheduled empty arena event. Unlike with Dana White, Chatri Sityodtong, the CEO of One, it any disappointment, saying, "We are living through the most extraordinary of times." The good news is that these short-term restrictions will undoubtedly slow down the coronavirus and flatten the curve. It was only last week when Singapore shut down schools and non-essential businesses. Singapore was very lucky in that the virus numbers were very low early on, but it has picked up in recent weeks and asked people to stay home. There have been 8 deaths in the country as of April 13th and 2nd, 532 total cases. Hoyce White, a 6'8", 260-pound former NBA power forward, is looking at getting into MMA. White only played 3 NBA games after being diagnosed with generalized anxiety, and even though he was a strong player, it was known going in that he had a fear of flying. He's now 28 and is training out of Greg Nelson's camp in Minneapolis, the same coach as Brock Lesnar trained under. He's also written a book about his switch called MMA x NBA, a critique of modern sport in America. WWE, The Revival were released on April 10th without any non-compete period. They made it clear they weren't going to re-sign. The belief is that they are headed to AEW to feud with the Young Bucks, something they've wanted to do for a long time and something the Young Bucks had pushed dating back years with the FTR stuff. The team will be called FTR, and they also are attempting to trademark the term Fear the Revolt, so the Revolt may be the new tag team name. They originally tried to trademark as Forever the Revival, but WWE opposed them on it. Dash Wilder, real name Daniel Wheeler, 32, will go as Cash Wheeler it looks like. Scott Dawson, real name David Harwood, 35, will go as Dax Harwood. From a timing standpoint, WWE released them right after AEW taped 6 weeks of television, so even though they are free to work there now and can be teased as coming and starting this week if they'd like to do so, it wouldn't be wrestling on the show on television. They could debut them on a May 23rd pay-per-view if there will be one. Another question that we don't know the answer to is whether AEW in these uncertain times will add 2 new salaries, because from a timing standpoint, this isn't the best time to be a free agent. Before, I'd say it was a lock they'd be signed. Goldberg on the Carcass podcast, transcribed by Fightful, went into detail about Wrestlemania and the changing of his match. I go to Orlando, I tape, I come back here and quarantine. It's just been like Groundhog Day. Obviously, I had a change of opponents at the very last moment. Roman Reigns, everybody knows he has leukemia, he's in remission, and obviously his immune system is down. I don't know why it was even considered in the beginning, besides he'd invested the time and invested the money in the angle, the match. So literally until the 23rd hour, it was still a possibility that he and I were going to wrestle. Plans changed at the very last minute. I did my match and it was possible that I could do a match with Roman again before the 5th. That obviously fell through. It was still a possibility on Reigns, and that he could go through with the match. We went to the building, and our temperatures were taken when we walked in. The place was scrubbed up and down. There were a limited amount of people allowed in and out of the building. It was very controlled. I think what happened was somebody was sick. The Miz and Roman had heard about it. They just had the flu, but just the fact that someone was sick under those circumstances, at the end of the day, he just couldn't do it. More power to him to continually want to get it done, whether that's realistic or unrealistic from a person in his shoes concerned, but you've got to love the guy because up to the 11th hour, he was still willing to do it. I'd never wrestled Braun before. We had no story. Yeah, there was no lead into it whatsoever. It was a reality check. This was a time where everybody knows Roman's situation. So it's not a fabricated story, it's reality. And so the reality was literally playing out right in front of everybody's eyes, Braun and I included. I mean, he had no clue that he was going to be doing that match, nor did I, but you know, in this business, you get to learn to roll with the punches. We just had to do our jobs. Yeah, no matter how unprepared we were for it. These guys wrestle a number of times a week. I wrestle 2 times a year. So it's a little different story for me. For them it's old habits. It's just what they do. You feel as though you have a responsibility to the public. 'Cause you do. We're one of the very few entities that are going on right now. And at the same time, you feel as though you're being irresponsible. So it's a fine line. But yeah, it's a business. Vince McMahon's a businessman and he was there. So he's not going to ask anybody to do anything that he wouldn't do. So he at least showed up. People could see that and understand that he was willing to put himself in a situation that was obviously good enough for an older person. DVR viewership of Raw has been declining of late. The last regular show with a crowd did 425,000. The first two empty arena shows did 353,000, on a show that would be expected to do significantly more, and 319,000. Coming off the rumors of Peacock not being interested in purchasing rights to the WWE pay-per-view shows, NBC Universal had a deck of slides to promote Peacock, talking about the rich history of the various NBCU channels, and the huge libraries of content they have. The USA Network was well represented throughout, and there was early plans talked of to build off the USA Network's original IP. There was not a single mention of WWE, which those who saw it told us came across as a staggering omission. Regarding sports ratings for this past week, SmackDown was number 1 in total viewers with 2,317,000 and in 18 to 49 viewers with 823,000. Number 2 was a replay of last year's Masters Golf Tournament, which did 2,163,000 viewers on a Sunday afternoon, but only 503,000 in 18 to 49 since golf skews so much older. AEW was number 1 in sports on cable, since NXT and Raw are listed as entertainment, but the NBA Horse Challenge beat AEW 416,000 to 331,000 for number 1 at 18 to 49. Rousey talked about sports salaries on Steve-O's podcast, comparing WWE and UFC. She praised WWE on that regard, because they have downside guarantees, pay people regularly, as opposed to UFC where there is one huge lump sum payment every few months. She defended UFC versus boxing with the claim the biggest boxers make more but the lowest fighters make more in UFC. Overall, boxing's percentage of revenue that goes to fighters is exponentially larger than UFC or WWE, and UFC's percentage is much higher than WWE's. The problem is that UFC has more than double the number of fighters than WWE has of wrestlers, and the top people in UFC make more, like McGregor and Rousey, but the bottom guys in UFC don't do well at all. Then again, the bottom 175 of the 300 in WWE are probably under six figures as well, and they are working full-time. I think it comes with the age of the sport. The older the sport is, the more the athletes can start to come together and fight for what they think they deserve as a unified front. The WWE being older, they definitely have developmental programs where they bring people into live and trained by the Performance Center in Orlando. They get a salary and they get unlimited access to doctors and physical therapists and all these different things. As an Olympian, I would have been so happy to have something like that. UFC originally didn't have anything like that. They started moving toward okay, we're getting some kind of medical insurance, cause it used to be okay, you're only going to be covered for injuries up to 60 days following the fight, and then okay, we're going to get some kind of medical insurance. WWE's even better, because everyone's on salary. It's not like you show up for a fight, you get paid, you show up for a fight, you get paid. They're treated like employees. They actually are on a salary. It's much more secure. If people get injured and they can't perform months and months and months on end, they can actually continue to pay them and pay for their medical treatment and make sure they're taken care of. They do their best not to leave people high and dry. This interview was done last week. Obviously things changed greatly. They really invest in talent and spend time building and developing them. As soon as they hire people, they're on salary right away, which is very, very different from having these lumps of prize money. In boxing, the top guys get an incredible amount of money, but the bottom guys in boxing make way less than the bottom guys in the UFC. If you're trying to develop a boxer regularly, you're probably going to have to build their record to 20 and something, and your manager's probably going to be like $200,000 in the hole with a fighter that's 20-0 at that point. In the UFC, it's a lot nicer to be in that lower tier than it is to be a boxer, but at the top tier in boxing, those guys are making an incredible amount of money, because they are promoting as well. They are co-promoting their part of the promotion itself. She did favor unionization of WWE wrestlers, UFC fighters and boxers, but recognized the problems in doing so. Football, basketball, these guys, the whole team can come together and be like, us as a team, we're not going to do this unless they as the team owners do this. It's much easier for them to come together to make those demands, whereas in the individual sports like boxing, UFC and WWE, even though it's sports entertainment, but still, it's individual. John Nash noted that in the Kung La lawsuit against UFC, Rousey's actual last UFC contract details came out. She was guaranteed $3 million per fight. But if she fought without a championship at stake, the guarantee was only $500,000. In addition, her pay-per-view bonus was $1 per buy between $200,000 and $399,000, $2 between $400,000 and $599,000. So in her last fight, with Amanda Nunes, she earned about $5.4 million. Regarding individual sports versus team sports, she said, "It's much easier to divide people and much harder for them to unite together, because people at the top are very well taken care of. I think it's harder for them to kind of unionize and make sure everybody else is looked after and gets a majority share in the profits at the end of the day. I think it's a constantly evolving situation every day." Her solution regarding wrestlers and fighters is something like the Screen Actors Guild. What I would like to see from all three, which is kind of like some wishful thinking that I don't think will ever happen, is similar to SAG, Screen Actors Guild or something like that. Whereas if you put a certain amount of time in, you are entitled to a pension. I would love to see pensions for boxers and MMA fighters and professional wrestlers. I don't know if we're going to get there, but that's what the NBA and NFL and fucking baseball and hockey all have. That would be my ultimate dream goal for all three of the individual big players. Rousey went on a tirade against WWE fans, blaming them for her never coming back full-time. I'm not surprised, as I figured internally that was her view when I watched the angle with Charlotte Flair and her where they turned Flair on her and Flair beat the holy hell out of her and the fans cheered Flair, particularly since it was in Southern California. And she's not shy about saying what she thinks. I'm sure she used it all for fuel at the time, since she then turned heel, since it pretty much had to be done. Then again, when Rousey came in and signed the 3-year deal, she promised WWE 1 year of pretty much regular work, and then after that she was going to start a family. The belief was she would be back at some point, but nothing was certain. But it was unlikely, you never say never, to be a full-time thing. "I love the WWE," Rousey said on an interview with Steve-O. "I had such a great time. I love all the girls in the locker room. But I was doing basically part-time and I was away from home 200 days out of the year, and when I did get home I was so sleep-deprived cause you just don't have time to lay down. So it's just like, what am I doing it for if I'm not being able to spend my time and energy on my family? But instead I'm spending my time and my energy on a bunch of 3-starsing ungrateful fans that don't even appreciate me. I love performing. I love the girls. I love being out there. But at the end of the day, I was just like, 3 stars these fans, dude. My family loves me and they appreciate me and I want all my energy to go into them. So that was my decision at the end of the day. It's like, hey girls. Love what you're doing. I'm gonna try and take all my momentum and push you guys as far as I can. Fly little birds, fly. I'm going 3-starsing home." And that was basically it. Several WWE women reacted to this, including Nia Jax saying she would knock Rousey out when she returned and blamed Rousey for injuring her friend Alexa Bliss. That would either be storyline or Jax would be reprimanded, so it's storyline. Right now there are no plans for Rousey to return right now, and if it's anytime soon it would mean things have gotten very desperate. Someday I suspect she'll return, depending on if or when she gets pregnant and then decides. Now it would be stupid for her to return, as returning in January to shoot an angle for next year's WrestleMania in Los Angeles makes the most sense. Although her coming back is more determined by the timing of a pregnancy than the date of a WrestleMania. But they are using her name in some form, linking with Baszler, since it was brought up on Raw this week based on all the publicity she got. Bliss, in an interview with Sporting News and Steve Milhausen, said she was upset by Rousey calling wrestling fake. Here's the thing, I want to start off saying I have a lot of respect for Ronda. I do. We get along great. I just said this already, and I'll say it again, I don't like when people use the F word, when people say fake. Because what we do is not fake. She's accomplished a lot in MMA. She came into our business and everyone was more than accommodating, more than wanting to see her succeed. It's kind of that thing where it's like this is a 2-person thing. Every match that we have, you're only as good as the person that you're in the ring with. The fact that she called it fake could be her opinion on it. But it's offensive to everyone that has had injuries, and myself included, because I've gone in the company 6 years without having a single injury. And then I ended up having a whole documentary based on multiple concussions that I wasn't even sure I was going to be cleared to ever be in the ring again. So kind of when someone does that, it's offensive. It's offensive to the girls that have worked their butt off, like you said. We all want to see each other succeed. When Ronda was here, we wanted to see her succeed. We were more than accommodating with putting the matches together and making sure that she had her moment because she's a star. She is. She is a star. We always wanted to make sure that we highlighted that. My whole thing is, if you're not going to be the star in the company, you're going to want to work with a star in the company, because that means you're getting the opportunity as well. So I wanted to work with Ronda. I had a great time working with Ronda. If she comes back to WWE, that would be amazing. I'm sure we will all work with her again. And it'll be the same, and just ask her to limit the use of the F word. When asked if she would talk to Rousey personally about it if and when Rousey returns, she said, probably. I don't know unless that happens. I have a lot of respect for her. She's done a lot. She did an amazing job in WWE. We respected her business, and we made sure that we catered the matches to her style, and so we didn't disrespect her style. So just for the people that helped you along the way, don't disrespect us and our business, that's all.
Samoa Joe is still not cleared from his latest concussion.
With so many people scouring the internet, women wrestlers doing hot videos is a huge deal.
The top 10 athletes with the highest amount of social engagement over the last week were 1.
Mandy Rose, 2. Sasha Banks, 3. Giannis Antetokounmpo, who doesn't fit into that category, he's an NBA player, 4. Natalya, 5. Tom Brady, 6.
Lana, 7.
Julian Edelman, 8. Trae Young, 9. Patrick Mahomes, 10. Liv Morgan. As we noted in the Jim Cornette story when Lawler made remarks back then that nobody cared about, no matter how it's sliced, when you look at Lawler and Randy Orton's usage of the N-word in recent months, what nailed Cornette was not as much as the joke he told but that he had made so many enemies that they were gunning for him.
On Raw on April 13th, when Tozawa did a flip dive off the apron, Lawler called it ramen noodle moonsault.
There was enough of an outcry that WWE edited off the Hulu replay of the show the next day, but it also came at a time when there was much bigger news around. Lawler wasn't asked to apologize. As I've noted before, apologizing is the right thing, but on social media, apologizing only makes the story bigger. So for those who don't care and play the pure strategy game, not apologizing may cause some people to get mad, but unless the story gets huge, it's not the best business policy. But hopefully this doesn't happen again, because even though nobody would bat an eye in 1999, if he said the same and worse, times have changed. A lot of NXT guys have been losing on Raw, but there are still rules in place. Theory was moved from NXT to Raw because somebody was needed in the spot and he did well enough that he's now there as a regular. Belair was a long-term plan to come up after Mania. Guys like Tahuti Miles or Cal Bloom on SmackDown are not on NXT television, so it's okay to use them as enhancement. Guys like Tozawa or Lorcan are considered 205 Live guys who also appear on NXT, so they are okay as well. The basic theory as espoused is that NXT is considered the front line of defense against AEW. They can work out a plan for talent needed on the main roster, but NXT has to be positioned as something other than developmental or a Raw/SmackDown feeder system right now. There was a barber backstage at the recent WWE tapings because barbers are considered essential personnel due to the cosmetic nature of the business. There is a change in the airing of NXT on the WWE network in the UK and Canada.
They are airing in those markets at 10 p.m. Eastern, but it's the show from the prior week, so the April 15th show was the Gargano vs. Ciampa show. These changes are based on protecting the television broadcasts in the market. In the UK, the deal with BT Sports came at a one-week window where you could only see NXT on their television stations. In Canada, it's to protect the television airing of NXT, which is on Friday nights. Regarding Canadian ratings, we have some stuff. April 1st saw AEW do 83,200 viewers and 47,725 to 54, putting it behind a 1992 Toronto Blue Jays World Series game and a Raptors playoff game from the past for the night. WrestleMania 32 aired at 6 p.m. and did 54,900 viewers and 28,725 to 54, and it also aired at noon and did 43,100 viewers and 15,025 to 54. April 2nd saw WrestleMania's Greatest Moments show do 97,400 viewers and 46,125 to 54. April 4th saw a replay of UFC 223 do 56,200 viewers and 25,525 to 54. April 5th saw the Ric Flair 30 for 30 do 42,200 viewers and 24,225 to 54. April 6th Raw did 196,100 viewers and 107,725 to 54 and was the most watched sports program of the night. It's well down from usual. WrestleMania's Greatest Moments airing at 11 p.m. after Raw did 82,000 viewers and 45,525 to 54. Main event at 7 p.m. before Raw did 51,700 viewers and 29,425 to 54. April 8th saw main event in prime time at 10 p.m. do 71,100 viewers and 31,125 to 54 at a UFC show headline by Anthony Smith vs. Volkan Oezdemir do 29,100 viewers at 7 p.m. For whatever reason we didn't get the AEW rating, as it is believed to be a chart omission since it aired right after the UFC show, and there's no way a first-run show on the station is doing less than 29,100 viewers. On April 9th, a tape of WrestleMania 30 at 4 p.m. on a Thursday did 39,700 viewers and 20,625 to 54. On April 10th, The live SmackDown did 91,200 viewers and 40,425 to 54.
That's a terrible number for the show. It wasn't even number one for the night as it lost to a taped Toronto Raptors Golden State Warriors playoff game and a 2017 CFL game. Main event at 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon did 77,100 viewers but only 19,525 to 54. Another airing of main event at 10 p.m. after SmackDown did 64,600 viewers and 39,525 to 54. NXT wasn't listed, which also has to be a mistaken omission like AEW. They're doing a tournament for the Interim Cruiserweight title based on Noaa tournaments. The new title was created since Jordan Devlin is champion and they can't get him into the country. Rather than trip him, they'll create an interim champion who would face him when he can get into the country. There is a four-person A block of Koshi, Jake Atlas, Tony Ness and Drake Maverick, and a four-person B block of Isaiah Scott, El Hijo del Fantasma, Akira Tozawa, and Jack Gallagher.
In the block, each wrestler will have one match with the other three.
The person with the best win-loss record in the block goes into the championship match. If there is a tie, then the winner who advances to the finals is based on head-to-head record. It's a takeoff on the type of tournaments Pro Wrestling Noah does. New Japan and other Japan groups do them as well, but Noah often will do them with four-person blocks while other companies have more in each block. WWE did do similar tournaments with Mixed Match Challenge. The producer for the Edge vs. Randy Orton match was James Gibson. Edge came off badly on Corey Graves' podcast about the criticism of his match with Orton, and said it was all changed late. The time that we filmed, it didn't coordinate with the ideas we had, so we find that out on the day, hours before. So we had to change everything, and that's truly what you saw, was a 40-minute audible, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we, without uttering two words to each other, were able to do that. I'll always be able to look back, and again, I thrive on challenges and I love challenges and talk about a massive challenge, so can we do this? Can we pull that off? It's a very, very challenging thing on top of the challenges that were already there. But again, that's part of the gig, it's part of your job.
It wasn't even anything that we realized, we were just going, and again, just ad-libbing and fighting. By the time it was done, someone told me it was like 42 minutes long. I was like, really? Okay. Well, damn cool. My wind is good, but I am very, very proud of it. And you know, I heard there's feedback that it was too long and it's this and it's that. Listen to me, all of the feedback I've gotten personally to myself or to my social media feeds has been all positive. When I have Bret Hart call me and tell me that he loved it because it looked like a fight, well, I don't care what anybody else says from that point on because his opinion to me has more weight than absolutely everyone anywhere. Nobody's going to top this opinion to me. And if he liked it and he thought it was a fight, good. Mission accomplished. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. It's wrestling. It's art. It's subjective and whatever blows your hair back, but Randy and I have broad shoulders, and we can weather the weight of a minuscule militia of malcontents who will just want to complain about everything, complain about the length of a wrestling match during a pandemic. Like really? Come on, but they're also the same people are going to complain that Bill and Brock went for 4 minutes. I just think there's a segment of people that enjoy not enjoying things and dwell on negatives. He was doing okay until the minuscule militia of malcontents line. Obviously it was a split reaction to the match, but I can also say that before I said a word about it, I'd already gotten feedback on it from those internally who hated it more than I did, so even in the company at best it was split and the consensus was it was far too long. I also think if that match hadn't happened the reaction to Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa wouldn't have been nearly as negative, not that it was that negative, but it was certainly somewhat negative, as it was. This is across the board, but the idea that without fans reacting, you have to keep matches shorter and change the way you work is something that a lot of people haven't grasped. There have been some changes regarding WWE on SBT in Brazil in the deal just put together. It started last week with 1 hour of an edited version of Raw on Saturdays at 7 p.m. Now it's changed to WWE on daily Monday through Friday from 2:15 p.m. to 3 p.m. Colby Covington, the UFC welterweight contender known for playing old-school pro wrestler, who says a lot of stuff just to say it, was on the What the Heck podcast talked about wanting to start with WWE in 2021. Covington was a regular at TNA tapings a few years ago when Dan Lambert, who owns the ATT Gym, was doing the angle with Bobby Lashley playing off pro wrestling and MMA in a storyline. That was the angle where Lambert shows what a great heel character he was, a role he's now playing in MLW as the manager of King Mo. Covington got the bug bad when he worked for TNA, but never understood the nuances, and unlike someone like a Chael Sonnen, Conor McGregor or Michael Bisping, who got using pro wrestling to promote fights,
Covington just said stuff to play heel, not knowing the difference between good heat and bad heat. But even so, he made himself into a much bigger star in the process. Those guys are true sports athlete entertainers, he said about WWE wrestlers. To put on a show like that for the world while everybody's at home watching, you don't have the same energy from the crowd and the same adrenaline that you get when you walk into a full arena. So to see those guys out there putting it all on the line, I respect those guys. Those guys are some of the hardest workers on earth. I hope to join them someday. I've got a lot of love and respect for Vince McMahon and what he's done for the business model of the WWE. My thing is I want to go to WWE and make wrestling real again. I want people to get behind it and think that it's real. You ain't going off the top rope on me because I'll take you out with a double leg. You ain't gonna get up there. So I'm looking to go over to WWE and make wrestling real again in the near future. Until then I'm gonna be retiring all the old fogies over here in the UFC. I've been talking to Bobby Lashley, my friend. He is a teammate. And Kurt Angle obviously. I walk out to his music for my fights. I keep in good touch with those guys. And Ronda Rousey, the greatest women's mixed martial artist of all time. It's good to learn from her and see her and how she's handling the transition from MMA to pro wrestling. I think I'm gonna have a good grasp of it. I grew up amateur wrestling and I know how to act, I know how to sell, and everybody knows I know how to entertain, so I think it's gonna be a smooth transition when I go to the WWE in 2021. I would say probably 2021. Next summer, not this summer, but next summer. I've been practicing moves and really working on my promo and mic skills and just control and slowing things down and understanding the art of wrestling. I want to make sure when I go there I make the biggest splash possible because I'm not here for a long time, I'm here for a good time and I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to make money. When I go over there I want to make Brinks trucks loads of money. Everybody knows I do good business, I pull numbers, people want to see me, I'm entertaining, and people are divided on me. They hate me and they love me, but it's all the same thing at the end of the day. Unlike a McGregor or Sonnen, whose promos would translate to pro wrestling, Covington is iffy and it's still Vince and size is a factor, plus the in-ring standard for today's pro wrestling is so high that very few can walk it in. Even Cain Velasquez, who learned at a freak pace from everyone who worked with him, he's a heavyweight and under contract here, and while he can't talk, he was with Mysterio who can talk with the best of them these days, and look at where Velasquez is. Rousey was an unusual set of circumstances and so much bigger of a star, while Covington is smaller and not an ethnic superstar. 32 is a tough age to start as well. Dwayne Johnson on changes in wrestling and his thoughts on them. I do miss wrestling. I love wrestling. I loved professional wrestling. I loved it. Here's what I loved about it. I loved creating with the pro wrestlers that I had great chemistry with, but the thing I missed the most about professional wrestling was just being able to connect with an audience every night. Every night was just a showcase. I didn't give a shit about being, as many of you know as you followed my career in pro wrestling, I didn't give a shit about being the biggest guy, the strongest guy, the loudest guy, the toughest guy, the guy who won all the time, the guy who was the craziest and jumped off the top of the cage, and moons and all that shit. By the way, there's a purpose for those guys, by the way, many of those guys are my friends. I just always cared about connecting with an audience. That was really the most important thing for me. So I miss that part about pro wrestling because there's nothing like it and there's nothing like being able to listen to an audience. I love it. But I do miss that, yeah. But also the wrestling business has changed really dramatically since I was in it. Not to say that it's changed for the worse or for the better, it's just different. I still follow it and I have a lot of love and respect for all the men and the women who continue to put their bodies on the line, and by the way, it's crazy they're continuing to put their bodies on the line as through this pandemic. They're still working hard and just wrestling and sweating on each other and just doing all this, but all in the name of entertaining the fans, which I think is always cool because wrestling has always had this adaptability to it that was always very cool. So thanks for asking me that. Christian on Booker T's podcast gave the indication that unlike his childhood friend Edge, he's not wanting to come back. I mean, it's one of those things, right? It's a completely different injury. You know, I'm pretty content with all that I've accomplished in WWE. I've pretty much accomplished everything I've ever wanted to do, except main event Wrestlemania, and let's be honest, how many people actually get a chance to do that? It's one of those. I'm 46 years old, you know, and I had some concussion issues. It's just a matter of, I don't see it happening. I'm medically disqualified. I just don't. I'm not sure how I would ever get cleared. Jerry Lawler is selling his Batmobile. He's a big Batman fan and had a Batmobile built, which of late has been on display at Mississippi Resorts Casino's Jerry Lawler Museum in Tunica. The car was signed by Lawler, Adam West, Burt Ward, who played Batman and Robin in the 1960s television show, and others. He's selling it for $110,000. They're pushing a 25th anniversary of Triple H's WWE debut on SmackDown. It sounds like a series of shows starting on April 24th. Look, any idea that may get people to watch these days is a good idea. It feels like an idea that may help for 1 week depending on how it's done. If they use it to bring the old guys back, they'll get a week out of it, but most likely by week 2 it'll be back to normal. The WWE pushed that the Big Show was the number 3 series on Netflix in week 1. The April 17th SmackDown show has Bryan vs. Cesaro in a Money in the Bank qualifier, Naomi vs. Brooke in a qualifier, Banks vs. Tamina, and a face-to-face discussion with Rose and Devil, along with a 3-way singles match for the tag titles with Miz vs. Jey Uso vs. Big E. Once again, the regular weekly wrestling shows aren't finding their way onto the WWE Network's most watched list. This past week's top shows were 1. Broken Skull Sessions with Ric Flair, 2. WrestleMania Day 2, 3. WrestleMania Day 1, reversing last week's order, 4. 10 Greatest Matches of the 10s, 5. Edge, Second Mountain, 6. Broken Skull Sessions with Bret Hart, 7. 2020 Royal Rumble. Notes from the April 10th TV tapings in Orlando. The show opened with Strowman out. He said that when opportunity knocks, you open the door. Right now the instructions on television are to not ever mention Reigns. Strowman said that he took the door off its hinges and put Goldberg down for good. This one did hurt Goldberg in his Bruno role and he may be dead in it, plus with the economic situation being what it is, it changes the purse strings and Goldberg is very expensive, the most expensive guy to use except Lesnar. Remember, Goldberg's original role this year was to put Wyatt over to build for Reigns getting the title. Nakamura came out and said knock knock. Strowman looked confused and Nakamura said that you are supposed to say, who's there? Nakamura said the last time we saw you we beat you. He said Strowman reminds him of a Japanese proverb. The weak are the meek and the strong eat. At this point Cesaro showed up. Strowman shoved Cesaro over the top rope and Nakamura then kicked Strowman in the head. Bliss and Cross retained the women's tag titles over Asuka and Sane in 12:28. Shouldn't this match have been on Raw? Asuka at one point started doing commentary in Japanese. She showed more excitement in doing so than any WWE main roster announcer in some time. Cross did a crossbody knocking Asuka off the announcer's table. Cole talked about paying tribute to the Legion of Doom when doing a move that was slightly similar to the Doomsday Device, although it was a forearm other than a clothesline, and a piggyback rather than a chicken fight. Bliss somehow did a DDT wrong. Bliss used Twisted Bliss off the top rope onto both of them and Cross pinned Sane after a neckbreaker. Elias was on the perch. Corbin threw him off cutting a promo. Basically he wants to be in the Money in the Bank match and said then he'd win the title. Ziggler and Deville were together complaining. Tucker came out and showed Ziggler photos of Otis and Mandy working out and eating bananas. Well, Otis had a ton of them to keep his potassium up. Tucker talked about Dolph being smitten with Otis Kitten. Ziggler pinned Tucker in 4:12. Tucker is very underrated but he's missing the charisma. Ziggler won clean with a super kick. Next was the dirt sheet with Miz and Morrison. They talked about all kinds of good things going on, such as Strowman being a champion who is around every week, and Morrison said he was the first guy ever to single-handedly keep the SmackDown tag titles. Miz said he was the first guy ever to keep the SmackDown tag titles while sitting on his couch. Miz claimed he was still injured and not cleared, but that was just a gimmick. They performed Hey Hey Ho Ho, which was pretty entertaining. The Usos came out and Miz got mad that they interrupted his performance. The New Day came out next. Big E came up with the idea that the other 3 who weren't at WrestleMania should have a tag title match, so next week it's Miz vs. Jey Uso vs. Big E for the tag titles. The Forgotten Sons debuted over Metalik and Dorado. It was Steve Cutler and Wesley Blake with Jackson Riker in the corner. What's funny is that they noted Riker and Cutler were Marines, which they were, but never said Blake was, and even said 2 of the 3 were. So in fake pro wrestling this is something they decided to be honest about. They pushed that Blake was trained by Dory Funk Jr. Good match. Metalik was great. The Forgotten Sons are good workers but lack charisma. They had just turned face in NXT and then were dropped when the decision was made to bring them up and they're back as heels. Cutler pinned Metalik after a double team stomp off the top rope and reverse DDT finisher. Carmella and Brooke challenged Cross and Bliss for the tag titles. Bliss said they'd have to talk about it and clearly didn't want to defend against them, but Cross accepted immediately. Bliss was mad about it but pretended that she wasn't. So in consecutive segments they were teasing Bliss and Cross breaking up and Bayley and Banks. Bayley and Banks came out. Banks said that the ignorant sheep will never understand their friendship. Tamina came out. Bayley told her that her hair looked great, she looked stunning and even from far away, they even smelled great. Tamina told her to shut the hell up. She said it took all of them to eliminate her from the Wrestlemania match. She wanted a one-on-one title match.
Bayley said that she can have the match if she can beat Banks next week.
Banks didn't seem happy with that idea. Tamina accepted and told Banks that her bestie just screwed her. Sheamus pinned Cal Bloom in 113 with brogue kick. Bloom looks like a stronger version of Edge. Good size and look. He's the son of Wayne Bloom, the former American Wrestling Alliance Tag Team Champion and Powerlifter Champion, who later was Bo Beverly of the Beverly Brothers in WWF. There was a Jeff Hardy feature on his early years doing backyard matches on a trampoline and early years in WWF. Strowman pinned Nakamura in a non-title match in 742. Nakamura hit the Kinshasa coming through the ropes. He went for a second one but got powerslammed. Not much of a match. Wyatt did an interview in the Firefly Fun House. Wyatt noted their past relationship and said that he brought Strowman from the swamp and gave him a home. But Strowman turned his back on him. Wyatt said that he was Strowman's creator. Wyatt said he would forgive him if Strowman said that he was sorry. Strowman said he wouldn't forgive him and Wyatt said that he wanted the title back. Wyatt said that I brought you into this world and I'm going to have to take you out. Strowman said that anytime Wyatt is ready, I'm ready to let you in. He then did the Wyatt see you later. For 205 Live, Tony Ness pinned Danny Burch with a running knee into the corner. Ness was yelling at the announcers after when Jack Gallagher came out.
The two had a stare down.
Gallagher beat Lorcan via DQ in a very wrestling-oriented match. Gallagher head-butted Lorcan and then was attacked by Ness for the DQ. Lorcan and Gallagher both knocked Ness out of the ring. Ness grabbed a chair. Burch then hit the ring and attacked made the save.
Notes from the April 13th Raw tapings.
The show was mostly good and the audience sticking with it at such a high rate for an empty arena show somewhat says that.
Interest in the product overall is also down and that's not changing for a while. McIntyre came out to start the show.
He cupped his ear to get the imaginary fan response. Lawler called his win over Lesnar the biggest win in WWE history.
McIntyre thanked people for the privilege of allowing them into their living room.
He did a very good promo, pretty much tried to act like he was one of the fans and rally people together during difficult times. He thanked the fans. He noted that fans can be negative but thanked people for not being negative about his win. He said that it's surreal to him that he beat Lesnar in less than 5 minutes and 20 minutes later beat Show. He talked conversationally to the camera as opposed to wrestling promo style, and with no fans, it came across better. He said he wants to be a different champion, a guy who shows up and defends the title. He said that if somebody deserves an opportunity at the title they will get that opportunity. Andrade and Vega came out. Vega said she's sorry for interrupting his Raw speech. He brought up that McIntyre lost his NXT title to Andrade the last time they wrestled.
McIntyre noted that in that match he tore his biceps which cost him 6 months. McIntyre agreed to the match later.
Asuka beat Riot in 12:58 of a Money in the Bank qualifier. Good match. Asuka used an ankle lock, German suplex and Shining Wizard for a near fall. Riot used a rabbit lariat. Riot missed a middle rope falling splash and Asuka put her in the Asuka lock. Riot got a cradle and used the flatliner.
I'll probably say this a million times, but the announcers and Vince need to realize that when somebody goes for the pin and the announcer says to put away Asuka and it doesn't, you are telegraphing that the near fall isn't the pin because it's done so frequently. Either do it very infrequently or not at all. It is a minor thing that hurts the near falls. Asuka won with the Asuka lock. Charlie Caruso interviewed Asuka, who did one of her crazy Japanese language promos that she's so good at and are entertaining even though people have no idea what she's saying. MVP did the MVP Lounge to announce 3 Money in the Bank qualifying matches including his own match with Cruz. He called himself the king of ladder matches and with his intro it sounded like the idea was he wanted people to think Edge was going to be there without saying Edge's name, and then getting heat when he says his own name. Black pinned Wwe Lorcan in 9:37. Another good hard-hitting match. Lawler said that Wwe Lorcan must be wrestling by his real name because who would make up a name like that? Maybe Chris Gerard would. Finish was Black Mass. Black was interviewed after by Sarah Schreiber and asked what his game plan was for next week. He said his game plan was to win and then walked off. Lynch cut a promo about her match with Baszler at WrestleMania. She said this would be a battle of heart versus skill, but it was really a battle of minds. She said that the quicker Baszler destroyed people, the sillier she got. She said the only person who can get close enough to the Queen, both Baszler and Charlotte have nicknames of being the Queen. Baszler is the Queen of Spades, to destroy her is the Joker. Lynch said that somebody born to bully will never beat someone born to survive everything. Caruso was with Andrade and Vega. Vega yelled at Caruso saying, "Who comes up with these questions?" Vega said that Andrade has been defending his title month after month.
Andrade said it was sad that it took McIntyre so long to win a singles title since he was NXT champion. Schreiber asked Baszler about Rousey, which was notable. Baszler just walked off. Baszler beat Logan in 52 of a Money in the Bank qualifier. Baszler was beating Logan down with punches on the ground when the referee pulled her off. That made no sense. If someone is on the verge of winning, you either stop it or let it conclude, you don't pull the person off and continue it. But they were looking for the spot to focus of Baszler stomping on Logan's arm at a bad angle and doing an injury angle. Logan was crying, literally crying. The match was stopped. The ring announcer then blew the call and said that Logan was the winner. Phillips said that didn't make any sense. How that was blown, I have no idea. But after the commercial break, Phillips said the ring announcer made a mistake and Baszler won. Rollins did the first of his series of promos. He admitted losing to Owens. Austin Theory pinned Akira Tozawa in 7:09 with the ATL, which stands for Austin Theory Launch. It's a name for the TKO. Theory was brought up too early, but he clearly has potential. Tozawa missed a kick and Theory sold it by falling to the floor anyway. Tozawa did a flip off the apron which Lawler called a ramen noodle moonsault, which led to some next day reaction. After the match, Garza and Andrade came out and Andrade gave Tozawa a draping hammerlock DDT. McIntyre did another promo saying that the circumstances were different and it wasn't what he dreamed about as a kid as a WrestleMania moment, but it's not his WrestleMania moment, it's our WrestleMania moment. Mysterio talked about Money in the Bank. He noted that in 2009 he lost his title when Kane cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase. He brought up that he's never won the Money in the Bank ladder match. Rollins did Stoic promo number 2 about still being our Messiah and he's truly risen. Garza beat Tahuti Miles in 2:27 with the wing clipper. Garza kissed a photographer before the match. That was his fiancée, the woman he asked to marry him on NXT television, which they aired, making him a super babyface when he was a heel and contradicted his ladies' man playboy gimmick. Andrade and Theory came in and Andrade dropped Miles with the draping hammerlock DDT. Asuka and Sane did an interview. Sane was asked about her confidence level going against Jax. She said confidence level and started laughing. McIntyre was with Caruso and showed his scar from his torn left bicep surgery and talked about how it was that draping hammerlock DDT that tore the muscle, caused him to drop his title and lose 6 months of his career. He promised to hurt Andrade and promised to Claymore kick Andrade. A babyface this early in his title run needs to make good on his promises, which he did in the end. Jax beat Sane in 2:35 with a Samoan drop to win a Money in the Bank qualifier match. No talented wrestlers were hurt in the making of this match. Charlotte Flair came out doing a heel promo talking about giving a history lesson with the Queen. She kept talking in third person and calling herself the Queen. Most of the interview was about Rhea Ripley, so they must have something planned down the line. She did touch on Io Shirai, who she faces next for the NXT title. Lashley pinned No Way Jose in 1:47 after a spear. The story here was playing up the problems with Lashley and Lana. Lana was screaming at Lashley. Lashley told her to shut the hell up. Lawler kept talking about how could Lashley do better than Lana. After the match they raised each other's hand but both looked pissed at each other. Rollins did another promo. Viking Raiders beat Ricochet and Alexander in 13-13. Some cool moves and some missed spots. Lots of near falls. The finish was supposed to be the Viking experience on Alexander. Eric threw Alexander in the air but Javar dropped him and sort of fell on him for the pin. They didn't bother doing it again and Javar did sort of fall on him like a power slam. Eric and Javar started making belt motions. The Street Profits and Belair did a promo. The Street Profits talked about the Viking Raiders. Dawkins put the Vikings over. Belair then came out and got mad at them, joking around, noting that they have never beaten the Viking Raiders. It's interesting how NXT feuds were almost never acknowledged on the main roster on the guys that such a small percentage of main roster fans saw them, especially prior to NXT being on TV. But Heyman ran a few things based on NXT past storylines and realities. McIntyre pinned Andrade in the main event of a non-title match in 5:33. Shorter than I expected, but that's not a complaint given shorter is better these days. Andrade used the spinning elbow for a near fall. McIntyre backdropped Andrade over the top rope onto both Theory and Garza. They chopped the hell out of each other. Andrade went for the same draping hammerlock DDT that he had been doing all night, but McIntyre escaped and used the Alabama Slam and Claymore kick for the pin. After the match, Garza used a chop block on McIntyre and Rollins jumped in and laid McIntyre out with a curb stomp. The show ended with Rollins hitting a second curb stomp. Notes from the April 15th NXT tapings. The show opened with Finn Balor over Fabian Aichner in 11:46. The first thing I noted with Aichner is his physical change, which isn't his fault, but if guys don't have well-equipped home gyms and they are body guys, You just can't keep it during this time. Largely a good match. Ashino is underrated. Balor is top tier.
Marcel Berthel was at ringside interfering.
Balor made a comeback and laid out Berthel with a sling blade on the floor and followed with a Wwe dropkick on the floor. Balor did a double springboard moonsault and a Wwe dropkick on Ashino, followed by a coup de grace and 1916 DDT. Balor's chest was just beaten raw in this match, all welted up. Balor still talked about wanting Walter, so he was a total face here. But later in the show, was a heel confronting Velveteen Dream, although not a hard all-out heel. And he's been a heel until they started the Walter program. Charlotte Flair did an interview. It sounded like she's going to be doing both Raw and NXT for a while as a regular. She focused first on Rhea Ripley, calling her the future. They tried to push her as the biggest women's star of all with clips of her making Lynch, Asuka, Bayley, Paige and Stratus all tap out to the figure 8 and showed clips of her destroying Rousey. That angle where Flair was supposed to turn heel but everyone cheered her.
Flair said that people say NXT has the best women's division in all of wrestling, so she's coming here to beat the women in the best division.
She talked about Ripley, Io Shirai, Candice LeRae and Mia Yim.
She noted that her first match ever in NXT was against Yim, and how much they've both improved since then. She said she wanted to give Yim the first title shot, which is weird since in theory Shirai won the next title shot in winning the latter match Yim was in. But it appears Flair will be facing all of them on this run. Flair is now the female Bret Hart because she says she's the greatest of all time, the only one who is the greatest of the past, present and future. Xia Li pinned Aaliyah in 3:11 with a twisting kick. In the tournament for the interim cruiserweight title, Akira Tozawa beat Isaiah Scott in 11:32.
Good match. A few spots were dangerous. Tozawa came off the steps Ito a flip on Scott and crashed into the barricade. Tozawa used the octopus and dragon sleeper. Tozawa went for a guillotine but Scott powered out with a vertical suplex. Tozawa got the pin with a senton off the top rope. This came off like an upset, but in a round-robin tournament there have to be some.
There was a video package on El Hijo del Fantasma.
Based on this, there may be a change in the kidnapping angle since Fantasma was positioned as a total Mexican babyface. Originally the guys were told the angle would be Jorge Bali, who is Fantasma, having a stable of guys that he kidnapped, Raul Mendoza and Joaquin Wilde, and then brainwashed to follow him. But this portrayal of him as a Mexican babyface hero doesn't fit that at all. They noted he was the son of a Mexican legend and had appeared at the biggest arenas in Mexico.
The entire vignette was him speaking nothing but Spanish with English subtitles.
For years the big thing when signing guys from Mexico is they wanted them to know and learn English, thinking you can't get over strong without it. So, notably, they have a guy who speaks perfect English and had him cut his promo in Spanish. Tegan Nox pinned Raquel Gonzalez in 3:14. Gonzalez just played monster like she was destroying Nox until losing via fluke. This is the classic example of a match where Nox was the winner, but Gonzalez was the one being put over strong, with the idea the win saves Nox from looking completely squashed. Dakota Kai was at ringside and kicked Nox in the head, but Nox kicked out of the pin. Shotzi Blackheart came out and attacked Kai. Gonzalez went after Blackheart and went to choke slam her on the apron, but Nox snuck up from behind Gonzalez and cradled her for the pin. They did a package on Keith Lee. It was the usual good production they do on these things. Lee said that 30 years ago at the age of 5, which gave away he's 35 even though he's considered a newcomer, he started watching wrestling with his grandmother.
He said she would tell him about the Freebirds versus the Von Erichs. That would have been before his time, as their peak was 1983-84.
He talked about being a big fan of Randy Savage. He said that he quit college football to become a wrestler at the age of 20 and his father was furious. He toiled for 13 years. He didn't say he had 1 or 2 tryouts and they never signed him. It really wasn't until Lee left Ring of Honor, where he was in a tag team and not really featured, and went to Evolve and then PWG, where he started getting major buzz which led him to be signed. But he did say it took him 13 years to get signed. Dexter Lumis beat Tehuti Miles in 1:44.
Miles came out dressed up like he was a player, unlike on Raw on Monday where he came out like an enhancement guy.
But he still got squashed with Lumis doing his weirdo nutcase act with no facial expressions.
Lumis won with a side effect and an anaconda vice.
Velveteen Dream was supposed to have a face-to-face meeting with Adam Cole. This had been promoted all week. Dream came out but there was no Cole. Something happened because it was clearly meant to build to Dream versus Cole next week, which was the planned NXT TakeOver title match. Dream did his promo and then Balor just showed up. Balor said, "I don't know you and I don't like you." Balor was mad that Dream challenged the greatest NXT champion of all time in Cole when Balor said he was the greatest NXT champion of all time. Balor said that Dream's ignorant comments will get him a date with the Prince. Dream asked what time would Balor be picking him up for his date next Wednesday, so they've got a match which in theory should be for a shot at Cole. Malcolm Bivens did an interview with Saurabh and Rinku. He said that his team challenged the winner of the upcoming tag team title match. Announced for next week is Leo Del Fantasma vs Jack Gallagher, Kushida vs Tony Nese and Drake Maverick vs Jake Atlas in Cruiserweight title tournament matches, plus Blackheart and Knox vs Kai and Gonzalez and presumably Balor vs Dream. Main event was a tag title match. The story was that with Pete Dunne stuck in the UK, Dunne would send out a secret replacement partner for Riddle that Riddle didn't know. It turned out to be Timothy Thatcher. Riddle and Thatcher retained over Roderick Strong and Bobby Fish in 2208. It was notable again no Cole at ringside, so for whatever reason he wasn't there. Kyle O'Reilly has diabetes issues, so he's playing it safe right now, as he should. It was good. Thatcher's style is so not WWE's style. They pushed Thatcher as the longest reigning Evolve champion in history, and I can't recall announcers ever pushing former Evolve champions or record-setting champions and other groups like that. Fish was bleeding from the bridge of the nose. Another hard-hitting match. Loomis was watching the match. Thatcher made a comeback with 4 straight belly-to-belly suplexes, 2 on each. Thatcher went for his Fujiwara armbar finish, but Strong made the ropes. Thatcher then got Strong in the move a second time and Strong tapped out. It was a big debut for Thatcher going over in a title match on his first TV show. The show ended with Tommaso Ciampa out. He said that the feud with Johnny Gargano is over and he has nothing more to do with Gargano and Candice LeRae. He never said that they screwed him and just said that the better man won. Killer Kross then attacked Ciampa from behind as the show ended. Kross' new name will be Karrion Kross.